Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. It's Tracy here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this. It's either a Santa hat or an elf hat, and mine is a little different from most that just go straight up. I like to taper mine a little more so that this kind of looks better at the top. I've trimmed this one with a pom-pom. I already did a child's one. It was kind of I said newborn, but it was a newborn up to kind of it was fitted like a large baby, because the one I made first, it was made slightly looser than the one I did on the tutorial. Just came up that way, and it fitted River, and she's nearly 2. So, but the one I made on the tutorial definitely was really kind of a smaller hat. I think I used different yarn for it, and that's why. So to be honest with you, this is an adult hat, but you can make this for a child or for someone with a larger head or a smaller head quite easily by just playing with the hook size or the yarn size. So for this one, I've used a DK yarn, because the one reason I wanted to do that was because I couldn't find too many tutorials for these kind of hats that use DK yarn. And over in the UK especially, DK is very, very prevalent. It's everywhere. So mostly you see Aran yarn. So if you follow a tutorial for someone who's made it with 4 weight, and you just kind of end up with a much smaller hat. So I wanted to do one that was predominantly like a DK hat. Now it does look really large, this one, and that's because it doesn't finish off like a hat would. It just looks kind of huge, but it isn't. And you make it to fit your head. So that's another way of making this size. Even if you're using a 4 weight yarn and a larger hook, you're going to make this band first, and you're going to make it fit the circumference of your head, whichever head that is you're making the hat for. So therefore the rest all kind of does follow suit. So this one I've made like an elf hat. I could have turned it easily into a Grinch hat, but this one I kind of just did as an elf hat. And for the next one, I'm going to just make Santa. So I'm going to use red and white. I've got more of this, don't worry, it's not all there is. So I'm going to start with the white yarn to make the brim, and that's what we're going to do first. So you'll need your yarn, and obviously it doesn't take a great deal of yarn. For this one, it didn't take very much of any one colour at all, because there were quite a lot of green, quite a lot of white and red, so it was equal amounts, and you could get away with maybe a 50-gram ball of each. I always make sure I've got more of it than I need, and possibly end up making more than one. So I've got 2 crochet hooks here, and that's because this is my favorite hook to use. I use this whenever possible, but for the red yarn you're not going to see it, so I'm going to substitute it for this one. Although they are the same make, I absolutely love the red ones. They kind of, this part here slips just the right amount for me. So, and I like the way the hooks are finished. They don't catch the yarn in any way. I used to like these ones and the rose ones best, but now this Tulip Red is my favorite one. So incidentally, all these hooks are available in my shop, and lots of yarn too. So if you haven't found that already, it's www.hobbyrocks.co.uk, and you can possibly find the yarn you're looking for to make this hat or any other project on a special offer, or there are voucher codes underneath the video and a link to the shop. So if you wanted to find it, you can. Regardless of when you're watching this, there's always going to be those offers going. So I'm going to clear this away and get ready to start the tutorial. So just pause it for a moment and come back to you. Okay, so if I didn't say it before, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be informed when new videos pop up. This is also going to be put up in right-handed and left-handed versions. So if this is not the one you need, if this is the right-handed and you need the left, then a little thing will appear up here and you can click on it and it will take you to the other one. So you just need to make a slip knot, and you can do that any way you normally do. So this, you do need a little kind of long enough tail to sew in, and we're going to chain 10. So I'm going to do this as if I'm teaching a beginner, because that way anyone can tackle it. It's a very simple hat. So we're going to yarn over and pull through the loop on our hook, and that is our first chain. We're just going to do 10 of those. So yarning over and pulling through the loop on your hook, and that's 2. So I'm not going to count anymore. I'm just going to finish off my 10. Okay, so I'm not sure, I did show the hook, but I'm not sure if I told you it is a 4.5mm hook. So in the second chain from the hook, the one on the hook doesn't count. So this is the first one here, and there's the second. We're just going to do a UK double crochet, which is a single crochet in the US. We're just going to insert the hook into that stitch, yarn over and pull up the loop, and we'll have 2 on our hook now. So we're going to yarn over and pull through both of them. And that is a UK double or a US single, and we're going to do one in each of our chain. So we're going to go into the next one and do the same thing. Yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over and pull through both of them. Okay, so I'm just going to get on and finish this line. Go all the way along. And I'm going to hold on to that with my little finger. We're just going to do one in each. For quite some time, this hat won't get any harder than this. Last one. We just leave our tail. Okay, so we're going to do a chain, and I like to cinch it down so I don't mistake it for a stitch, and we're going to turn our work. Now we're going to go in each of these stitches in our back loop only. So if you lift it up, you can see a V. Each stitch has a V. This is the front loop of the V, and this is the back loop. Front loop, back loop. So we are going to go into the back loop of our first stitch. Now, if you haven't cinched down your chain, you might get confused as to what your first stitch is. So if you do, a way around that is to just insert your hook into the one that's facing you on this side until you're very familiar with it, and then you can just do your single crochet US or double crochet UK in that back loop, and that's all we're going to do. So if you hold it up, you'll see front loop, back loop. We're going to go in, we're going to do one in each one along in every single one of our chains, which you've got 9 of. If you've made 10 in the beginning and you've gone into the second one, you should have 9 stitches. Okay, so I'm going to pause it for a moment and I'll catch up with you when I get to the last one. Okay, so ordinarily I wouldn't have paused it, but I had a parcel come into the door, so I knew I had to stop it anyway. So now I'm on my last one, and you can still see the V, but sometimes it is hard to see that stitch, but you can just, if you put your hook downwards, you can catch it. So there's my last one, and you can count them if you've confused and you don't know if you've got enough. Just count the V's at the top. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now that would have been really embarrassing, wouldn't it, if I'd got 8? So I'm going to do my chain, and I'm going to cinch it down. I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to go into the top of my V's again and go into the back loops only and do exactly the same thing, going into the back one and doing my row that way. And that is all we're going to do for our brim. It's as simple as it gets. Just going into those back loops. Now, a little word of warning, if you're not familiar with this, if you go down, you can pick up more than you bargain for. So do make sure when you're going into your back loop, you've only got the one loop that you're gone into, because sometimes you can pick up some of these on the underside by, you know, being a bit forceful. not watching what you're doing or whatever. So we're going to go all the way to the end, just as before. We'll do a few rows and then we can see what it looks like. So what I mean, it's sometimes harder to see. The V has got a little squashed on this one, but you can just about see the back loop there. And if you fish it, you can get in. Actually, that might not be it. Let's count them. See what I mean? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It is it. It can be confusing. Doesn't look like I've gone into the right part. What's going on? Maybe I haven't. Maybe it's here. There we go. So sometimes it is hard to see, but if it didn't look right at the end, as it didn't for me, you'll know there's something wrong. You count your stitches, and if you've got the 9, then something isn't quite right and I'd gone into the wrong part. So that's just it's good it happened, because you can see that it can happen. So as I said, if you're confused at all, you can actually just go into the one nearest you while it's facing that way. So we'll do another row and then we'll stop and look at it. It's harder to actually do these rows when you're kind of showing people and you're doing them slower than you would. And I think I need to go down a little bit as well. There we go. Didn't want to go off camera to get the whole stitch. No, split the yarn there. That's fine. Nearly there. And we'll just stop and have a little look. Okay, so pull that out. Now what's happening is we're making these ridges, as you can see, and on the other side the same. But I will say, one side will look like it's the right side to you. Even though they are the same, one side will look the right side and one side won't when you come to do your hat. So what we're going to do is we're going to carry on going in those back loops only for quite a number of rows. Now for me, it was 82 rows that I had to do. That was the circumference of my head. But what I want to do is I want it to go around my head. Excuse the little hair there, or piece of fluff. I want it to go around my head, but not so that it fits loosely. I need it to fit around my head and pull slightly. So you want to make sure that when you measure it around the head in question, you've got a little gap like this, and it would just pull a little bit to close it. You don't want it to be tight, otherwise your hat will be loose. So you just carry on making your brim until you reach the desired width. So if you're making it the exact same as me, it will be 82 rows. Okay, so I'm going to pause it then, and I'll catch up with you when I've got my brim all done. Okay, so here we are. Here's my brim and my 82 rows, and that's what it looks like. The other one looks a little baggier, but that's probably because I've pulled it around. So now we're going to join it, and therefore I'm going to pop my hook back in to my loop, and I'm going to get my brim in a nice long untwisted vibe, and then I'm going to just take my hook out for a second, and I've got to turn it around because I need it to be, oh, that's a tail. Just going to hide it because otherwise it will get in the way. And I'm going to go into this very corner of the side without the loop. I'm going to pick up that loop. I'm going to bring it through like that. And now we're going to crochet this together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to catch just the back loop of the next stitch and go into the hole of the next stitch on the other side. So this is the loop on my hook. I've got one loop of that one and two loops of the other, and I'm just going to slip stitch through it all. I'm going to carry on doing that all the way along. Make sure you don't do it too tightly so it doesn't pucker and pull, but you want to just get those together nicely. Now it doesn't, the brim, the join won't look absolutely the same as the other ridges, but it really isn't noticeable, not when you're wearing it. And this is just a fun hat as well, so it doesn't matter too much, but it really won't show. You always get a join of some sort in crochet. You can hide them and make them invisible joins in most things. And this is about the best way on this. So we're going in the end and in this corner. Corner stitches can be a little more fiddly to get into. And there we are. We have now joined it. So if I open it up, you'll see it does notice a little bit more, but not enough to write home about. Remember, this is our end, and it'll be sewn in, and then this won't be there. So you can see it's just a tad fatter, but you wouldn't really notice it. But now you've got a band, and what we're going to do is insert our hook back in. Now, we have 82 rows in our brim and our join now, which will make 83. So all the way around this top, I'm going to pick up 83 stitches. So I'm going to start with a chain, which I will cinch down and go into the same stitch that I'm in and do 1 UK double, US single crochet. And now I'm going to go all the way around. Now be careful where you go into, because otherwise you will make visible holes. I'll see if I can show you what I mean. So if I went into there, that's going to make a visible hole. So what I found is if I go to the left of that, go through, I can pick it. That's not even do it. If I go to the left of it, I can go in. It's the same area, but it doesn't make a visible hole. And then I can go into the one at the side of it. It's not easy to show you on camera. And now I want to go into this side, but I'm going to just loop that top one. So I'm not going through the whole thing to make it's going through the whole thing. There we are. So we're not making like massive visible holes. And we're just going to pick up our stitches all the way along our brim. We're going to do that all the way round and just picking them up. It's simple as that. Okay, so I'm going to pause it and I will catch up with you once I've done that and I've got all of my brim. Just be careful where you're going in, because as I say, you don't want to make those big kind of visible holes. You want it to look neat. I don't like that one, so I'm going to undo it and find another one. But just pick up your stitches, one for every row, all the way around, and try not to make holes as you go. That's all you can do. I will catch up with you when I get back. If you need to, just pop in a stitch marker if you can't remember which stitch you started in. But if you've left this tail, then you should be able to see it. So I'll catch up with you when I get back to this point. I will just say, because it is kind of a fun hat, if you don't have the same amount of stitches, for instance, if when you get to the end you have, that's not where I want to go, you've got 84 stitches, or you've got 81, or if your hat is smaller you've got less stitches, it doesn't actually matter. That's not really what this hat is about. I'm getting in a mess because I'm talking at the same time as trying to pick them up. But yeah, just pick them up evenly so that they are nice and flat and even, and you've got the right amount going around your brim. That's all that really matters, not the stitch number. I just wanted to make that clear because I told you how many stitches I had. But this one could possibly have less than the previous, or a little bit more than the previous. It just depends. So just pick them up in a nice even manner all the way around your brim, being careful not to make those holes as I mentioned. Okay, so I'll catch up with you when I've done mine. Okay, so I made it all the way round, and I just went into every single part and made sure I didn't make any holes, and I don't count my stitches. There's no point really. It's just I did on the last one just so I could let you know how many I had. But now what you may need to do is make sure that you've done one where the join is, so you can just slip stitch into that one and you haven't got a gap. So all we're going to do is slip stitch into that stitch there, and we're going to end off. So you need a pair of scissors. I'm going to leave a nice long tail. No reason to work the yarn in if you want to. I'm going to do a chain, cinch it down and pull that out. So now we have a brim. So this is the front of it and that's the back. So what we're going to do is we're just going to change our colour now to whichever colour you want. So if you're making the colour scheme like this one, then you know you'd have probably done a red border, a brim, and you can now start changing your colours to make stripes. You can do kind of Freddy Krueger style, red and green elf stripes if you want, but I'm just going to do a plain red hat now. So I'm going to move the white out the way because I won't need that until much later, probably when I do a pom-pom. I'm going to bring in my red. Now this is quite a deep red. This one I made quite a bright red, and the baby one I did was green and red, and it was quite a bright red. I think it was the same one as this. But this one I've decided to make it a little bit on the darker side. So all we're going to do now is find the end and bring in a new colour. So I didn't do a change of colour, I just thought as it was a complete rose end, it's just as simple to start a new colour just by starting a new colour. So I'm just going to pop my hook in to my stitch, which is where my join is. I'm going to bring my new colour in. Now you can join your yarn however you want, but just lately, I haven't always done it like this, but just lately I have started to just bring that forward, that new tail, and make a chain so it's tucked up inside there. And I cinch that chain down a little. And now I'm going to do a UK half treble or US half double in that stitch. So it's not going to count that chain. I'm just going to go in to the same spot and pull up my loops and yarn over and pull through all three. So I will show you properly now, if you don't know how to do a UK half treble or US half double, because that one was a little difficult to see by. I'm going to change my hook, because I did say I would do that, didn't I? So that it would be easier to see. Okay, so we yarn over. It's the same size and everything, isn't it? Yeah, didn't want to make a mistake. Yarn over, and we're going to go into the next stitch, but we're going to go into the 2 loops like usual. Yarn over and pull up the loop. We've got 3. Yarn over and pull through all 3 of them. So we're going to yarn over, go into the next stitch, going through the 2 loops, not a back loop this time. Yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. And that is all we're going to do in every single stitch all the way around our hat. But the reason we do the first row in the white is because we will get this line of where it looks like you've got little jagged edge. You will get that. But if you were going into the top of the brim, then that would be very uneven. So our first row will always be the same colour as the brim, just to even that off and give us a nice straight edge to do our first row of stitches in. Okay, so I'm going to pause it then, because all we're doing is UK half trebles or US half doubles in every single stitch all the way around. So I'm going to carry on. I'll pause it and I'll catch up with you when I get back to this point. Okay, so I'm almost there, almost back to the start, and I'm going to go into my last stitches. Now for this next part, I have actually gone into both those stitches, so it looks a little bit, let me just join it and see what happens. I'm going to join it with a slip stitch into my first stitch, and I'll see if that actually looks like there's a gap. It's not too bad, that's fine. It's just that there isn't a stitch in between there. I don't think. I've got my glasses on, and the fact is, because it's white, it's hard to see sometimes. But is there a stitch there? No. Okay, so I'm going to join into this first stitch with a slip stitch. And if you, like me, you cinch down your chain, then you'll be able to see that that's your stitch. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, because every other row we're going to start our row slightly different. The first row is the first way we're going to do it. This row is the second way. And what that will do is it will make our seam more or less invisible. I mean, if you look at this hat and you go all the way around it, you can't see the seam. It's invisible. And that's because I staggered the actual, I think it's here. I think it's, no, it's not. Is that good? You can't see it. And we do that by staggering our start and end point. So this time round, we're going to do a chain and we're not going to cinch it. And then we're not going to go into this same stitch that we did before. We're going to go into this next one, which is here. We're going to yarn over and make that our first stitch. And then we're going to go into every single one all the way around. And I'm just the same. And this is all we do, this stitch. It's now, I'm going to get a knock at the door, guys. So I'm going to pause it and I will catch up with you when I get back to this point and show you what to do next. Okay, so I've made it all the way around. And now I only have these stitches here. So this one is where my chain has come out. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to do my stitch, and then I'm going to ignore this chain and I'm going to slip stitch into the next one along. I hope you can see it. I've put the light on just to, I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so I've gone into the stitch where this one comes out of, my chain, and I'm going to ignore that chain. I'm going to slip stitch into this stitch. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull it over to stop the seam, because I don't know if you've noticed when you do a seam on a round crochet, it will slant up like that, and that's going to stop it. So that, it did seem a bit strange, but it will work. So now we're going to do our chain, cinch it down, and we're going to do our stitch in the same stitch we've just come out of, and we're going to go in each one around. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to alternate. We're going to alternate those two rows, so that, I do apologise, I've got the water company outside, so it might get noisy. Hopefully not. That's who was knocking at the door. But I've just pulled some yarn out. So hopefully everything's going to be fine. So we're going to alternate. We're going to do, oh, I'm really zoomed, aren't I? Let's unzoom. Make sure we're still rolling, because sometimes that stops it. But we're going to do one straight stitch, if you like, and one where we're going into our chain space, you know, the one where the chain comes out, and then we're going into the first actual stitch, pulling it back over. We're not pulling it physically, but that's what in effect our action is doing. So now we're just going to go in one of every stitch around, doing our half treble, half double crochet, and we're going to get back to this point here, and I'll just recap with you what we're doing. Okay, so we're almost back at the beginning. I've got a few stitches to do. Okay, so there we are, that we're back. This is our first stitch. I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that one, because that is the actual stitch, rather than, oops, didn't come out, rather than a chain, because I cinched my chain down. So now we're going to do a chain but not cinch it, and we're going to go into the next one along, and we're going to do that, like I say, those two rounds. We're just going to repeat those all the way around, and we're going to do a total of 8 rows. So we're not going to increase, decrease, do anything. We're just going to stagger our join, and we're going to just do one in each for 8 rows, and you can easily count those. 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th row. I'll pause it then and I'll come back to you once I've got my 8 rows. Okay, so I'm all the way back and I've done my 8 rows, and this is how it's looking. So if I just take my hook out, it's kind of looking nice, and it is tapering slightly, but that's fine. It's hat, so we want it to. But yeah, looking good. So what we're going to do now, we're going to start decreasing and making this part of our hat. So we're kind of, on this one, it was quite simple. It was just one lot of each colour, and now we're going to start pulling it in and making the kind of hat shape. Okay, so I'm going to chain 1, cinch it down and do my first stitch, and we're going to do 6, so that's including that one. Okay, now we're going to do a decrease, so it's either half treble 2 together or half double 2 together, depending on where you're from. We're going to yarn over, go into our first stitch and pull up a loop, and then we're just going to go into the next stitch and pull up a loop. So we have 4 in our hook, yarn over and pull through all of them. Well, that split, didn't it? I'm having a bit of trouble with this hook splitting this yarn. These hooks don't normally split, but they're splitting this yarn. Okay, I'll do that again. Okay, better that time. So now we're going to do the same again. We're just going to do 6. It does really split. I've got a feeling there's something a little bit wrong with this hook, you know. It seems to be a little sharp. That's why I prefer the other one, I think. I think it might have a little defect. I guess everything has defects in manufacture. Hooks shouldn't be any different, I guess. So now we're going to decrease again. So it's yarn over, go in and pull up our loop, go into the next stitch, just not yarning over, and pull up the loop. So we've got 4 and pull through all of them. Now we're going to do 6. And decrease. And then 6. And we're going to do that until we can't do it anymore. Now on my other hat, on my last decrease after that, we're nearly round over then. On my last one, I had 8 stitches. Maybe different for this one. This one might not have the same amount of stitches, so we'll see. It doesn't really matter what remainder you're left with. As long as it fits you, that's all that matters. Just doing 6 and a decrease all the way around. If I have to pause it at any time, then just bear with me. It's because those water people are still outside. But I'll stay with you all through this round anyway. And remember, you won't necessarily have the same amount of stitches as me at the end, but that doesn't matter. It depends how many you successfully pull up. I'm going to have to pause it. I'll be right back. This is a parcel. It's that time of year, isn't it, when you just get lots of interruptions. So that was 3. Obviously, I'm making a Christmas hat, so you can't help getting Christmas packages through the mail. I shouldn't have far to go, really. Need to pull some yarn. How many did I do? 1. There we are. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 10 stitches now. So I can do a 6 and then a decrease and then have a remainder. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, now I've got a little knot in my yarn. Typical. I've managed to undo it. So I'm going to just join with a slip stitch to my first stitch. So now we're going to do these decreases, but at the same time, we're going to keep the integrity of our straight edge. So this time I'm going to chain 1 and my first stitch will be in here. And we're just going to do 1 whole round without any decreasing. So we're going to just do 1 in each. That will pull it together nicely. So just 1 in every single stitch, and then when you get back around, go into the same stitch as your chain and slip stitch into your first stitch as normal. I think actually there's my chain, so I'll be slip stitch into that one. So I'm going to go all the way around and I'll meet up with you when we get to this stitch here. Okay, so back again, and is that my, yep, got to go into my last, or where my stitch came out of, and into my first real stitch to close that up. Okay, so that's now pulling in nicely. So this next round, just need to pull some yarn out before we start. My water board are going to be making a noise. I don't know whether to do this now or leave it a little while. I'm going to pause it just for a little while because I'm not sure what kind of noise that's going to make on my video. So I'll just pause it for a little while. It will be instantaneous for you, but hopefully that motor will be gone by the time I come back. Hi, I'm back again. It's a good job I paused it. It was very loud. They've gone away for half an hour, so while they're gone, we'll carry on. So this time we are going to do another row of decreases, but we are going to do 5 before we do our 2 together. So this round is, oh, I can't remember if that one, now I can't remember if that was one of those where I join, it was right over there. Yep, there we go. Only because I had a big gap between. So now I'm going to cinch my chain and do 1 in there, and I'm going to do 5, then a decrease, and then just go into however many I've got at the end. I've got BT now. Can't believe it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All go. Seems to be utilities day. I don't think they're going to knock here though. But then again, who knows? Okay, so you don't need me to stay with you on this round because it's exactly the same as the row we did beneath this one, except instead of doing 6, we are doing 5 and then our decrease. So I'm going to pause it then. You can go all the way around, and whatever you've got left as a remainder after your last decrease, then just do those and join it when you get to the end. Okay, for me, if I did another decrease, it would be right on top of my join, so I'm not going to do any more. That was my last 5, so I'm just going to carry on until I get to the end. So that's kind of what I mean about just going into the last ones. Okay, so I'm just going to join it with a slip stitch, and the next round then is just 1 in every one all the way around, just as we did after our last increase. We did the 1 without anything. So that's what I'm going to do in this next round, and I'm going to keep the system at the seam. So my next one will be going into just 1 chain and going into the next one. So I'm going to go all the way around and come back to the start and catch up with you once again. Okay, so I've made it all the way around, and I'm just going to go into the same stitch as my chain came out of, and then after my chain I'm going to just slip stitch into my first real stitch, and that's keeping my seam nice and straight. So now we've done our 6 and then a decrease and then a 5, then a decrease. We're going to do 4 now. So all you need to remember is, if you're making it stripy, to keep the stripes the same, to change colour when you need to change colour. I did 4, as I said, but you can do 3, you can do a bigger band, you can do a thinner red stripe going through it if you want, as long as you keep the stripes and the integrity of that going. And that is true as we're tapering up this long bit that's going to dangle. Your dangly. As we're tapering up the dangly, you want to be able to make sure that you finish on 4 rows. Now the last one's very small, and it does get quite tricky to go around these as you get further in, but yeah, it's not that difficult. It's just a little bit fiddly is the word. Okay, so now we're going to chain, cinch it down. You might be on a different round. It doesn't matter. Whatever row you're on, whether it's going into the next one, we're going to do 4 and then our decrease. So that's our first one, and we're going to do 2, 3, 4. Whoops, only went in half of the stitch, and we're going to do our decrease in the next one, and we're going to do that all the way around. And if we've got enough to do 4 decrease and then the remainder, we're going to do that. Otherwise, if there's say 6 left, we're just going to go into those last ones, and I shall then do 1 row without any decrease. So we're going to do a row with 4 in between our decreases, and then 1 row without decreasing at all. And if you have to change colour within that, then obviously do that. And I will catch up with you when I get to the end of my row without decrease. Okay, so I thought I'd just stop at that point and take a look at it. And we've got this closing up quite nicely, but we don't want to close it up too much because we want it to just continue. So that's what it's looking like anyway. So what I'm going to do now is, for my next round, I'm going to repeat the last decrease round, and you don't have to, you can carry on from this point, but I like it to not be quite so fat when it starts to just finish up, you know, when you get this long part. I'm not really keen on it just being, I like a little almost funnel like vibe. So I'm going to do 4 again between my decreases, and then 1 row of just half trebles to the end, and then I'll meet up with you again when I get back to the start. So we're repeating the row with 4 between our decreases, and then one row without decrease, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so here we are again. And now we've got an opening of, I've got 43 stitches, which is exactly, strangely enough, what I had for the last one, because I wrote it down on my pad. So now I'm going to continue without any decrease at all for 10 rounds. So if you're changing colour, likewise, keep the 4 rows or however many rows you're doing of your colour in that 10 rows. So keep in line and make sure that you're doing everything that you were doing. So I'm going to come back to you once I've done 10 rows without any further shaping at all. If you want to, you can pop in a stitch marker so you can see which one was your beginning row, and then you can count up that you've done 10, because otherwise it might get a little bit difficult to see which was your first row of the ones without decrease. So I've got a stitch marker here somewhere. Here we go. I'm just going to pop that in, and I'll know when I've done my 10 rows. And then, as I said, I will come back to you. Okay, so now we've got our 10 rows, or however you've done. You can remove this stitch marker and put it aside. Sorry if I'm a bit croaky. I've not been that well today. So here we go. This is the back of our work. Just to put it side by side, and we're now on this last little tapered section. But just a little word that if you wanted to, you could make this part as long as you wanted. So you could do more rows along here, or you could, once you get to this part, you could just extend it outward a bit more and just make it as long as you want. Have it come right down to your waist if you want to, if you've got enough yarn and if you think you fancy it. But I'm just going to carry on with this one, the same pattern as before. My water people are back, so it is going to get extremely loud, so I'm going to abandon this one for now, and it will be instantaneous for you, but I'm going to have to come back to you once they're finished. Okay, they're finally gone. It's all done. Thank goodness for that. No more interruptions for me. Okay, so now we are going to do 10 stitches before we do a decrease. So this one is, we obviously keep our edge the same. So we're going to do 10. This is where it gets awkward going round. I don't know if you've noticed. It gets worse. When I talk, I lose count. Just count them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It doesn't matter if you've got more stitches, less stitches, or you do 9 there. It kind of, it will work out. So don't worry too much. Don't get hung up on numbers. So we're going to do another 10. And then our decrease. And we're going to do another 10. Oh, I think I might have moved my camera. Sorry about that. To pull out our yarn. This ball is getting low, but but I think I've got just enough to finish it. Got more anyway. I think it's one more. I'll just do it in my decrease now, it doesn't matter, because after that one we're just going to decrease to the very end, and then we're going to do our join it together. And I think that I just need to check my notes, bear with me a sec, because I wrote this as I went. I'll turn the page. I think it is 1 in every stitch without decreasing. Yep. Okay, so the next row is just 1 in every single stitch, no decreasing, so I'm going to pause it and I'll come back to you once I've done that row. Okay, so I'm all the way around, and in this one we're going to do 4. So I'm going to do my first one. I'm going to do 4 stitches. And then a decrease. And that's drastically different from 10. But that's because I don't want this to go too skinny. So we're going to do 4. And then decrease. Of course, it's so much easier when you're not doing it on a camera. Hang on a second. I think I might need to go up a little bit. It's a bit difficult to swivel this at the same time as crochet it. Just try and move the whole thing round. Okay, so we're just going to do 4 and then a decrease in every one. So I'm going to carry on doing that, and then however many I'm left with, I'm just going to go into those and then do a join. I'll come back to you once I've done that. Okay, not forgetting to keep your stripes the same colour if you're striping. I'm going to do 2 rows without any decreasing at all. So I'm going to complete those and I'll come back to you once we've got there. Okay, so this is what it's looking like. This is the back. So this is our join all the way up here. You can see it's nice and kind of more or less invisible. It's harder to see it on the other one that changes colour. So this row again, we're going to do the last 3 rows again. So that is, we're going to do 4 and our decrease, 4 and our decrease, and we're going to fit as many of those as we can in. I would say we'll only do like 2 or 3 of them at the most, and then the next 2 rows will be without decrease. So and keeping your stripes if you're striping, and keeping your seam the same. So this row is 4 then a decrease, 4 then a decrease, possibly 4 and then all the way around. I think that will work out, and then 2 rows without decrease. So I'm going to get on and do those and I'll come back to you. Okay, so this is how far we've got and we're nearly at the end. So from now on we're going to do 4 and do our decrease, and then 4 and then our decrease, and we're going to do that until we can't do that anymore in this round. And then we're going to do 2 rows without decrease. Then we're going to do 4 and our decrease, 4 and our decrease until we can't do any more. And then 2 rows without decrease. And we're going to keep our stripes and our seam. And then we're going to do that for, hang on a moment, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, for 6 rows then. So that what's 2 decrease, well, so 1 decrease row, 2 without, 1 decrease row, 2 without, and then I'll come back to you. As you can see, we're right near the end now. So what we can do at this stage, if we want to, is just carry on for as long as we possibly want this to be. Or if you wanted to taper it longer, instead of doing 2 rows of without decrease, you could just do like 3. But I didn't want it to look too stepped And I think if you just do 2, it does taper quite nicely. This yarn was actually, for some reason, a lot more drapey than this one. Must have been just slightly different. But so this one is a little bit narrower than the other, but not a great deal. So you can carry on for a little while if you want without shaping. It is hard to get around now though, guys, isn't it? But so we're getting near the end. So I'm just going to carry on and without shaping for another, I'd say about 5 or 6 rows. It really depends where you're at with your stripe, because you want the last part to have 4 rows. Even the last row, which is pulling it all together, needs to sort of be within that colour. So you need to kind of carry on and make sure that your last section still has the 4 rows of colour if you're striping. Okay, so I'm going to carry on and I'm going to just do, without any shaping at all, another, let's see, 7 rows. Okay, so now we need to close this up, and for that you're going to need a couple of rows. So whatever, if you're striping, I'm just pulling some yarn out, what you need to do is make sure that your last couple of rows are, you know, where you're going to end. So you can taper this over 3 rows, or you can do it over the last 2. It really depends on how many stitches you have left at the end of this. So I'm going to just decrease in every stitch around, and we're going to drastically reduce our stitches. It gets very difficult to turn it when you're on a table, but we'll carry on. Can't even find it. There we are. Just keep going round. I'm not so sure I did that one right. Looks like I did. It's getting twisted, that's why, as I'm going round. Okay, so I'm nearly there. It's getting difficult because they're getting a bit long looking. Okay, so there's my last one. I'm going to join to the first one of the previous, not the first one of that round rather, the previous round. What am I talking about? Okay, so now the last row, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to just decrease in every stitch if you can find them. It's not that easy because they are there. Just pulling it together nicely. It's just turn it around a bit. I don't think we'll need to sew this closed. It does help to not drop the stitch. Oh, I did it again. Can you believe it? Because sometimes wouldn't happen if I wasn't sitting here like this. But you know, workmen always blame their tools. So the saying goes. I think this is my last one. It's hard to see on a camera, so I'm just going to have to, if it goes out of shot, I do apologise, but I can't, I'm going to have to do it close up. So I think I might be there, you know. Okay. I think I am. Let's just check that out. Okay, so I can't really go any further. It's just got very small at the top there. So all I'm going to do now is join it. Do I even need to? I don't think I even need to, but I'm going to just finish off because I know that there's a slip stitch there to join. I'm going to do 1 chain, cinch it down. I'm going to leave a nice long tail and end off. because when it comes to it, I'm going to put a pom-pom on there, just like this one, which I haven't made yet. And I'm going to push it through, and then I'm going to use this. I'm going to have that on the inside. I'm going to use that to really tie it on there before I sew all my ends in. And then once I've sewn all the ends in, if the pom-pom was the same colour, you can hide them in this, which is what mine were. I could, I could just, the ends of the pom-pom could just lose them in this. I haven't trimmed this off completely yet, as you can see, but yeah, all I need to do now is sew this end in along the bottom, and all I'll do is I'll go up this seam and down a couple, like up the seam and down, bury the tail in the seam, and then this one I will just leave until I've made the pom-pom. So I don't usually do the pom-pom on like a tutorial, because I do feel like my pom-poms leave a lot to be desired. I'm not the best pom-pom trimmer in the world, but if there was enough interest in that, then I would make a pom-pom and show you how I attach it. I'll leave that up to you guys, but I'm sure you will know how to make a pom-pom. So if there's any rows where it just needs to be pulled out a little bit to stop it looking stepped, then do that. But that's it. That's the hat. All you need to do is add the pom-pom, but you can make this as long as you like. In fact, the longer the better, I think. But I didn't really have much yarn left for this one. Where are we? That's all I had. So I was beginning to worry about whether I'd have enough to finish it and not start a new ball, which was earmarked for something else. So I didn't really want to go too long. But yeah, I really like them quite long. As long as it's not for a baby, then I think that's fine. I mean, obviously, for a baby or a young child, you wouldn't want it so long that there was a danger they could hurt themselves or get it round their neck in any way. But if it came down to just past their ear, then that would be fine. But for an adult who should know better, really, then that will be fine. So thanks for watching. Just a note on sizing then. If you wanted to make this larger or smaller, that's ever so easy to do by using different yarn, different hook size. So you could carry on with the same stitch count, make it with an Aran 4-weight yarn, and it would be bigger. If you wanted it smaller, then just drop down the crochet hook size. I've got a 4.5, but you could drop that right down. It would make it more compact a little bit, or you could even reduce it to a sport weight yarn, or which I don't really like working with very thin yarns, but you could, if you wanted to, drop down the yarn size and the hook size. But with a DK weight, quite often I'll use a 375 upwards, so you can drop it down a little bit more. But to be honest with you, I'm winding this yarn up as we speak. The brim, making the brim fit the head first, will kind of make this hat fit any size, really. You could go any size you want, but let's turn it round. This is the back. Yeah, so this back, all I will do is sew that end in. I like the seam. It's hardly noticeable, and yeah, I kind of like that. But there we are. That's it. It's all finished. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you soon.